Welcome to Mr. Wilson Live. You are definitely in tune to CSEC Biology TCP. And today we're going to be looking at dengue and, of course, malaria. These are two diseases that are transmitted by the vector mosquito. Now, if you're not here as yet, you're late. And if you know anyone that should be here, just call them on over for me so that they can join the family so we can start and have a grand time. I was not here for quite some time. I have almost lost track of the number of weeks that I have now where the number of classes have been away. But nonetheless, I was out there doing some work for you, a whole lot of work. And of course, I did plan to unveil something special this evening. But the amount of work that I have doing, I was not able to do that this evening, but I'm sure that I'll get it done before the end of the week. Now, tomorrow, we have a lot of publication to make. Tomorrow, you're going to be getting the 2019 paper 2. Tomorrow, you're going to be getting the alternative to SBA, that's a paper 3. And I think tomorrow as well, we have codominance coming out, and possibly we are going to have sexual reproduction for kids coming out tomorrow. Remember, Thursday is our day for publication. So how you have been doing? I realize my friends in St. Vincent, they have been having a rough time. I am that type of person who really like to follow natural disaster, but it seems that it is more than they can bear over there in St. Vincent. And my prayers is definitely with them there in St. Vincent. I hope that this eruption will come to an end pretty soon. But until then, what can we do but pray? Is there anybody here from St. Vincent or anybody close by? Let me just say good evening to the members of the room. I'm seeing Cheryl, I'm seeing Kimola, I'm seeing Tanisha. Tanisha is here early. And I'm seeing Powell, Johnson, Anderson, and again Powell. So let me see what's here. Good afternoon, sir. Good evening. Yes. Yes, sir. Watching, wondering what's happening. All right, good. I was all fine. I was really fine. I was really doing some work. One, and the holiday, I was in and out. I was in Kingston. I was in another parish and that type of a thing. So as a result, I wasn't here. But I have been doing a whole lot of work, a whole lot of work. So not to worry, we're here. So how are you doing? You want to share that with me before we get into the lesson? Is everybody all right? How was the holiday? Everybody is fine? Yes, sir. It's rough. What's rough? Is it the exam preparation or is it the COVID and the lockdown? What's really rough? Hi, Jawawan. Okay, Johnson is good. Great. Wonderful. Douglas is good. I hope. Good evening. Wonderful. So what's rough? Is it Tanisha? School reopen. School reopens in Guyana. Interesting. School was partially reopened here in Jamaica for those in grade 11, but it was closed. Not too sure what's happening there. Some public notice on the outside. Not too sure what happened, but I think the number is pretty much rising in Jamaica, and as such, they had to close school and we're online again. So we're doing everything online. I was writing an animation a couple nights ago for uh, non-reducing sugar. You know, non-reducing sugar is one of those special food tests that we all need to know. I just have a lot of work to do and anxious about the exam being near. All right, most persons are going to be anxious with the exam coming like a storm at you. Most persons are going to be anxious, but don't worry yourself, all will be fine. Studying, Anderson is studying. The eruption of I can't call that word La Sofira. I'm not, I'm sorry, I can't. Macmillan, you're from St. Vincent? It's rough. We're back on school lockdown from. I don't understand, Jawawan. Tell me again what's happening there. Macmillan, you're from St. Vincent? Oh, you're back on lockdown from 2 nights. Okay, you're back on lockdown. It's sort of somewhat relaxed to some extent here in Jamaica. Last weekend was really, really rough, right? I went home and I had to come back on Monday instead of a Sunday. I think we had lockdown from about Saturday or Friday there about straight back into Monday morning. So it was really rough for us. All right, I think I understand. I think I really understand, but I hope that things will get better as we go along. Now, if you have not yet liked, share, or subscribe, it might be time for you to do so. And I encourage those persons who are doing the alternative to practical to go to my channel, go to the biology experiment or the biology skills, and watch the labs. I have been working the paper tree and I realize that I have done all those labs and they are on the channel. I will tell you, they are not going to be there forever. The videos on the channel, some of those videos, soon you won't be able to access them. So make use of these content while they are available. Not everything will be there. We're sort of cleaning up the channel and optimizing things and that type of stuff. All right, to go off a little more formal. Oh, oh, wow, you're here with us. So you are not close to the volcano, I assume, because you're here with us. I thought that everything was on lockdown in St. Vincent as a result of the volcano. Our prize with you. I am lost for words. I'm lost for words, but I do hope that things will be fine soon. All right, cool. All right. With that said, let me just say this bit. The volcano is in one of the Caribbean territory. So there is a great possibility, a lot of persons will tell you that the exam was already set. But the exam was already set when we had COVID, and COVID was on the January paper. So I personally think we are going to be seeing something for the HSB paper. We could see the volcano as in asthma. We could look at it, could come under that content, or it could come under air pollution or water pollution, right? So all of those are possibilities. We're going to be looking at asthma and how these natural phenomena could affect our health. I also still think that COVID will have a repeat of COVID on the exam, if not COVID, something on the volcano, because it's a regional exam, and when there's a regional phenomena, we usually see it appearing on the exam paper. So we really don't want to get to that exam and we were not aware, or we did not take follow due diligence in ensuring that, of course, we observe what was happening and, of course, educate ourselves on things like those. So we want to look a little bit at asthma. Now, I know that persons are waiting on me to start, but I usually talk a little bit because this is not one of these rigid rules. It is a family, so we try to talk a little things and then we get right into the lesson. Another thing is that I want to call some of the questions for the exam. I'm going to be doing my publication, but I am looking and scrutinizing the paper. And you would have heard me saying on some of the past papers that I've sent out already, some topics that you cannot allow to miss, or you can't allow to pass. You can't allow yourselves not to know about sewage treatment. Yeah. You can't allow yourself not to know about water, right? How to purify water, chlorination or boiling. You need to know about sewage and sewage treatment. You need to know about pit latrine. You need to learn about the more formal method of course, sewage management. You need to look at that. Sir, this is for the HSB student or both. The class is for both. Everything that I'll be doing now is for both. The truth is, I have probably one or two topics leaving biology. The biology syllabus is pretty much finished. It's the HSB syllabus that we have to do all a disease, then we have to do environment, and then we have to look at water and sewage treatment. But I'll be jumping the syllabus to look at those so as to ensure that it is covered. Now, I was just telling you some things. Just let me read here. Forgive me, guys, I have to read. Sir, remember, I'm still in Trinidad because I was here because of the pandemic. Oh, yes. So I decided, oh, okay, that's cool. All right, good. All right, so I was calling some topics for the exam. I said that I strongly believe, based on what I've seen on the paper, that something will come back on sewage, be it the commercial management or the pit latrine. Something is going to be there on sewage treatment. Something is going to be there on water treatment. Of course, I did say natural selection and artificial selection, those are going to be there. I also strongly believe that the recombinant technology in some form, that is genetic engineering, in some form, that will be there. It's very important that you understand the production of insulin. On the paper I did, I don't know if it's a paper that I sent out already or one that I have to be published. I did look at the recombinant technology making vitamin A, as it were, with the golden rice. So we need to look at that. So you probably want to jot them down before I make the publication. Sewage treatment, you have to know that for the exam. HSB, that is. Water, you need to know about water. Natural and artificial selection, you need to know about that. Recombinant technology, you need to know about that. You need to know about diabetes. You need to know about that. I will make other judgment as I go along, but I am almost certain that these topics will repeat. The truth is, the sewage and the sewage and the, forgive me, the sewage and the genetic engineering is usually always question between question 4, 5, or 6. Something there is going to be that. So it's like a given, we know what those 3 questions are going to be. All right, we know what they're going to be around. Our problem is between question 1, 2, and 3, where we have to look at life processes. That is sort of a little difficult because a whole lot is there to be covered. But for the last 3 questions, we can like jump. That is like from genetics right back to the rest of the syllabus. The last 3 questions will be from genetics to the back of the syllabus. We know that. All right, so we're here, we're ready to go. A lot of time spent talking, trying to ensure that everybody is comfortable and everybody is here. We're going to be looking at dengue. Now, in our last class, we were looking at the mosquito life cycle, or one might say the mosquito life history, or some person might say metamorphosis. All those are going to be correct. Let me hasten to remind us that the life cycle, as it were, the complete metamorphosis, as it were, with the mosquito, it is going to be the same with the housefly. I'm going to be looking at the housefly, right? That's going to be a very short lesson for me, but I'm going to be looking at that. So we looked at the mosquito, then we looked at the life cycle or the life history, and we looked at the Anopheles, and we looked at the Aedes aegypti. Now, just before we hop on into this lesson, just to recap what we did then, can you tell me which of the mosquito is responsible for dengue fever? Just type it in the chat for me as we gauge ourselves to move on. Which of the mosquito would be responsible for dengue fever? So you have to say the name of the mosquito and then you say the dengue fever, because I'm going to be giving you more questions as well. So as you type that, I'm also going to be asking you another question. Which of the mosquito is responsible for malaria? All right, so type, come very fast. You can send them. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions now. A very interactive session I plan to have. All right, so the Aedes mosquito is the Aedes aegypti, the Aedes mosquito for dengue. Anybody else? Come on, guys, you can't be wrong here. You know, it might not be something that we're looking for, but we'll definitely explain it or try to explain what you would have posed. So Jawawan is saying the Aedes. All right, Amoy, good evening. Amoy is saying the Aedes aegypti. causes dengue fever. Anybody else? All right, 2 persons would have responded so far. Anybody else? All right, so we want to know which of the mosquito is responsible for dengue fever. We want to know which of the mosquito is responsible for malaria. All right, so Jawawan is saying the Anopheles is responsible for malaria. Powell is saying that the Aedes is what? It's just Aedes. Aedes what? Remember I said that you should put Aedes and what it is responsible for. All right. All right. So Amoy is saying the Anopheles causes malaria. And of course, Kevon is saying the Anopheles mosquito is responsible for malaria. All right. Very good. I think for most cases I have seen so far, everything is fine. So now I will take it a little bit higher. Mona Lisa smile. Which of the mosquitoes is responsible for yellow fever? Which of the mosquito is responsible for yellow fever? Of these two, I'm not going to send you anywhere else. Which of these two mosquitoes would be responsible for yellow fever? Would you know that? Yeah, I gave you something recall, but I wanted to see if you did any more reading. So I'm now asking you something else about mosquito. Which of the mosquito is responsible for yellow fever? And if you watch the video, I did make mention of it in the last class. Which of the mosquito is responsible for yellow fever? All right, so Roy is saying that yellow fever, it's the Aedes aegypti again. Powell is saying the Aedes aegypti. Macmillan is saying the Anopheles. The Anopheles is for malaria. You see, that's why I wanted to say the disease and the causative agent, or the vector and the disease. Sorry, vector and the disease for yellow fever. All right, beautiful. All right, the Aedes is indeed responsible for yellow fever. So which mosquito would be associated with elephantitis? Which mosquito is responsible for elephantitis? All right, going well so far. Which mosquito is responsible for elephantitis? Let me see how much we've done. Are you Googling the information? Which mosquito is responsible for elephantitis? You must have seen persons with some limbs that are swollen. That might be as a result of the elephantitis, which is of course caused by a worm that is transmitted by a mosquito. So which mosquito is responsible for elephantitis? And you feel free to go and Google and see if you can find what elephantitis look like. No, it's not the Aedes. It's not the Aedes. A clue it started C. Okay, very good, Tanisha. All right, so Tanisha has it there. Very good. So we are on our way. Thank you very much, guys. That was very, very good. So we're looking at the Aedes, and just to recap, the Aedes mosquito is endemic to many regions in the Caribbean. Many places in the Caribbean would have the Aedes mosquito. Now, they tend to feed during the day. They tend to feed during the day. However, the time of day would come sometime about after breakfast. I don't know what time, 8, 9 there about, between 7 and 9. And again, the feeding hours again might start again sometime between 5 and 6 o'clock or 5 to 7 in the evening. Now, this information is very, very important. I have some students doing some implementation of planning and design, and they are having problem finding mosquitoes because they are doing the lab at the wrong time. So mosquitoes are not out there that they can have to do what they want to do at the time they are carrying out the lab. So it's very important that you understand when these mosquitoes will be around. Now, it is also important to note that the Aedes mosquito will of course feed about any time, even though it have the specific time frame, it will feed at any time, providing that the time is cool or if the mosquito is on the inside. So in your house, this mosquito will be a nuisance to you, but if you're on a football field and it's hot, that type of thing, you're not going to be having the mosquito troubling you as it would in the house. Now, another very important thing that I said in the last class is that the Aedes mosquito is found more in town areas. And we attributed that to the fact that the mosquito, like the drains and all of that, the water, the running water that you'll be finding in a lot of towns, as such, you have this mosquito really, really prevalent in these areas. So we're now going to be looking at the disease that is associated with the dengue virus. Now, I know on one of the paper, I'm not sure if it's on the 2019 paper, the paper is asking you to make a distinction between dengue and malaria, something to that effect. I don't remember which paper it is on, but I'm sure I did work a paper with that. So dengue, the first thing I want you to know, the causative agent for dengue is going to be a virus. The causative agent, what causes the disease, is a virus. What transmits the disease or move the disease from one person to another is called a vector, and the vector is, of course, going to be the Aedes aegypti mosquito. It is a mosquito and a specific type of mosquito. So it goes without saying that dengue is attached to a fever that can be a real severe fever. Now, some symptoms that are associated with dengue, they will be evident about 3 to 14 days after a person would have become infected with the virus. Now, remember, to be infected with the virus, you would have to be bitten by a mosquito that is also infected. And as soon as this mosquito tries to feed, then that is the time when that virus will enter your body. And about 3 to 14 days thereafter, you might start feeling ill. So you might not even know where you got this disease. You might not even know where you were bitten by the mosquito if we were supposed to do a trace. Now, some symptom for the disease is that the biggest one you will always remember, the first thing that should pop up is that you will have fever. You're going to have a fever. All right. Now, you're going to have headache somewhat in the frontal lobe, this region of the head. You're going to be having that headache. You're going to be having that fever. And you're also going to be having some abdominal pain, or one might say belly pain. So you're going to be having the fever, the headache in the front part of the head, abdominal pain. But it goes a little further. You will also have joint pain. So you're going to be having some pain in the joint, and you might be wondering what is happening to you. Now, while you're having those pain in the joint, the muscle will also start to ache. So you understand that you're now really, really getting sick. Now, a new word to a lot of persons' vocab is that you're going to have what we refer to as a short respite. Now, it's pretty much like a short break or that period during this illness where it seems as everything is fine and then it just starts again. So we call that little break a respite, RESPITE. All right. So we have that little break and then it go again. And this is sort of common with dengue fever. All right. Now, the fever is something that we must be concerned about. And one of the other big reasons to be concerned about the disease is that it could cause the liver to become enlarged, and as such, you could have some amount of hemorrhaging or bleeding may also occur. So I looked at some symptoms now, and I did divide the disease or the ailment, one would like to say, the ailment, I divided them into symptoms and signs. So if you realize just now, everything I spoke about were things that the patient would have to tell you about. Now I'm going to tell you about some things that you will be able to detect, and these are what we refer to as signs. So a person, along with the symptoms that we spoke about earlier, the person might be vomiting along with those symptoms. So sign, vomiting. The person might have some rash that emanates somewhere from the torsus region here, and that might somewhat spread to the face and the limbs. All right, so it might start on the tarsus and then it spread to the appendages, so to speak, face and limb and that type of a thing. And I did say the most important thing here is that this disease can cause the liver to become enlarged, and then, of course, we're going to have bleeding. Now, if we're having this bleeding, another problem that could be associated with the bleeding is that we could have a circulatory failure. So the circulatory system might fail as a result of this dengue virus. Now, another big thing that is somewhat like hemophilia is that the blood will fail to clot, or its ability to clot will reduce. The blood will fail to clot, or its ability to clot will reduce. Now, if you are in my shoes and you heard all I said just now about dengue, then you should be looking around to see if you see a mosquito anywhere, or if you're looking outside, you see something that you could, of course, damage the breeding site or clear up or destroy the breeding site of a mosquito and try to prevent yourself from being bitten by a mosquito. Because we see that a mosquito could change your life forever. A mosquito could change your life forever. So for those of us when they are fogging and we close up our houses and then we are quarreling with the government that you don't know this nice stuff and this whatever, you need to open your windows to ensure that we can get rid of these mosquitoes so that, of course, you can have a happier life. I don't know how many persons remember chickpea and zickpea, what it caused in the Caribbean, and to a lot of persons who are still ailing from all that went down then. I mean, I didn't get chickpea. I really don't know, so I can't tell you much about chickpea. I heard persons saying this and saying that. Most disease parts, I don't get them, and I really don't like the vaccination stuff, but I am not affected by a lot of those stuff. I don't know if I have the best genes and things like that, but a lot of persons are still ailing from chickpea and zickpea. Good evening, Audrey. Now, we can see these signs and we can, of course, cure off the symptoms. And we might allude to what could be the fact that the person is suffering from dengue. But it might not be true. So, how do we find out if a person is suffering from dengue fever? It's not so difficult. They are going to do what is called a blood test. And when this blood test is done, what they're going to be looking for is that there will be a reduction in the amount of platelets in the blood. So the amount of platelet will, of course, be reduced. Now, another thing is that the antibodies to this particular virus will show up in that blood test. So don't go around and just make diagnosis or prognosis or whichever one it is. Don't just go around and see a person's vomiting and showing some of these signs and symptoms and you go running that this is, of course, dengue. It might not be dengue. What we're going to use to prove or to find out whether it is dengue is that we're going to do a blood test. And when we do that blood test, we're looking for the platelets, the number of platelets, and we're looking for the antibody that is associated with the dengue virus. All right. So I do hope that you are frightened. I do hope that I scared you a bit just now, and you are now really, really in protective mood where mosquitoes are concerned. But the nature of the infection, what happens, what this infection, why should I be concerned about it? Now, there are 4 strains of dengue. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 strains of dengue. The thing about dengue is that if you were supposed to be exposed to strain 1 and you develop an immunity for that strain, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to catch strain 2. In a matter of fact, the fact that you've been exposed to strain 1, you become more susceptible to strain 2. So you can always be infected by another strain of the dengue virus, even if you were infected before. This is where the problem comes in. If you were infected by the disease and it was cured, you have some amount of immunity. If you develop another disease, or if you were supposed to be affected by another strain of the dengue virus, this is where now we start to have real serious concern, because you might very quickly go into what we refer to as dengue hemorrhaging fever. Some might talk about dengue hemorrhagic fever, but hemorrhaging, you're bleeding inside, right? So when you have a second infection, or if you were supposed to be infected a second time, then the chances of you having this bleeding is much greater. Now, there is some amount of immunity after you have recovered, but the immunity is to the particular strain that you were infected by. It doesn't mean that you are going to be, so let me give you an example. You were infected by dengue 1. It doesn't mean that you now have immunity to 2, 3, or 4. So this dreaded disease, how can we control it? What is it that we need to do? When I was growing up, my grandmother used to use these words, and I didn't even know that they have really significance. She said that prevention is better than cure. So the first thing we want to do in tackling this problem of dengue and the Aedes aegypti is to ensure that we enforce those 6 vital practices to ensure that we eradicate or stay free from mosquito. We could use mosquito nets, we could use repellent, we could use biological control, and the many others which we covered in the last class. The truth is, in controlling dengue, there is no real vaccine. However, we could use acetophen or acetaminophen to control the fever. That is the fever that is associated with dengue, not the dengue. This medication is to control the fever. To deal with the dengue, we have to allow the body to treat with it. So during that time, you will have to get plenty of rest. You'll have to ensure that you drink a lot of fluid, that you don't become dehydrated, and that could lead to death. In some extreme cases, because we're having probably some hemorrhaging and that type of thing, you might have to resort to blood transfusion. You might have to resort to blood transfusion. So the takeaway here is that there is no vaccine for dengue. There's no vaccine for dengue. So the best cure, the best prevention for dengue is to ensure that you destroy those mosquito breeding sites, is to ensure that you are not bitten by a mosquito. So, what do you think? What will you be doing to safeguard yourself against dengue? Tell me in the chat while I listen or while I read what you're going to be typing. Then I'm going to be presenting on malaria. So we looked at dengue just now. We looked at what it does, the causative agent, and what is likely to happen if you have this disease, and if you are not following the doctor's directive, you might end up dead. Mosquitoes are really dangerous. All right, good. So what are you going to be doing to safeguard yourself from dengue? Tell me in the chat. I'm going to be asking some questions before I move on to malaria. What are you going to be doing to safeguard yourself from this dreaded disease? Type it in the chat. Then I have, I think, 2 other questions I want to ask you. You're going to use mosquito repellent. You're going to use a mosquito net. That is good. Anything else? Anybody else? All right. Destroy mosquito breeding site. That is a good one. Sir, get rid of all objects that water collect in mosquito breeding site. Protect against mosquito bite. Example, long sleeve, insect repellent. Very good. Spray the habitats. And I know persons didn't say this, or it has not been said as yet about using oil and water. Remember, if you are using oil and water, it should not be a water supply that other organism would have used as their environment. For example, you'd have frogs, you might have fish. Remember that you can also use the little fish that we call tiki tiki or goby. We can use that fish in the water. And we can also use, thank you, we can also use Bacillus thuringiensis to deal with the aquatic stage of the mosquito, right? Remember, Bacillus thuringiensis is a biological control. Now, I have one other little question I want to ask you very quickly. What are some of the social impact that this disease could have? Social impact. What are some of the social impact the disease could cause? Impact. I close my windows very early as well to prevent any mosquitoes from entering. So Macmillan are suggesting that you know the time that the mosquitoes will come. So you could easily set up your experiment to find out whether or not mosquitoes prefer light colored clothing or dark colored clothing. All right, so I think that's a lab that my students are doing, and they really don't know what time the mosquitoes will be out, so they're having a little challenge there. So what are some of the social impact that we could expect from the dengue disease? Social impacts. All right, so while you think about that, just let me furnish you with some more information. All right, so social persons could be dead. It could lead to death, and of course, if we have death in the family, other persons might become sick. We might have students falling out of school, and the ripple effect or the domino effect is far-reaching. Now, when you get a graph, I'm realizing on a HSB paper, I am yet to see a HSB paper without a graph. So I'm just going to be talking a little bit about graph very quickly before I get into malaria. Increased demand on the healthcare system. That is so true, DD. Job loss. That is so true, DD. Wonderful. That's very good. Yes. I'm still looking for your answer. I know. While I'm talking, I'm still looking for that. Hi, Shante. All right. So when we get a graph on the paper, listen carefully for those persons who have not done the topic graph. The usually, the content that is in the first column of a table goes on the x-axis. We could also say that it is the independent variable that goes on the x-axis. Your axis must have a name. Where are you going to get that name for the axis? Take the name from the table that forms the header column to give your x-axis a name and the y-axis a name. The graph should also have a title. Use the title for the table and change the name from table to say graph showing whatever the table was showing. Easy. 1, 2, 3. Then it is time now to look at how we put the information on the graph. Now, the data that you are getting to represent on the graph, there's a possibility that it might not come well sequentially aligned, or it might not be 1, 2, 3, 4. You might have 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, 11, 12, that type of a thing. Make sure that you are paying attention to the content, that you can find a midpoint. Now, when you look at the graph, you are going to see the graph paper is in grids of a centimeter. And then in that centimeter, I think you're going to have 10 smaller lines, millimeter, that type of a thing. So make sure that you are making up a grid that you can manage. So I'm just going to draw something rough here, probably a graph paper. All right, so I'm just drawing like about 2 columns. All right, so good. So here, we're going to have some bright lines. And then in between, we are going to have some smaller lines. Now, when you are making the scale, you probably want to write this down. Please ensure that your graph can fit about 70 to 75%. 70 to 75% of your graph paper. Try to put the graph on about 70 to 75% of the graph paper. All right, remember that you are going to put, let me just draw this line on the outside here. That wasn't a plan, but let me draw it on the outside here. You are going to put the name of the axis to the side. So the graph paper, I think will look something. This is a better graph paper. I don't have a graph paper, but I'm using this. All right, good. So the name of the axis will go on the side, and then you will put the number, the scalar type of thing that you are using there. So here, the first column is going to go on the x-axis, and then the other column usually is on this axis. But you have to be very careful. I'm going to be doing a lesson on which type of graph covers what. All right, because you don't just use any graph. All right, you don't just use any graph. So on the graph paper, you're going to be working on the scale. Now you want to ensure that you use a scale that will capture all the data that you have from the table. However, if we were supposed to have data like, let me just give you a data set very quickly. Suppose we had 10, 20, 30, and then it goes right up to about 100. So you observe that 30 to 100, how do we represent that on a graph? Now, to represent that on a graph, we can do two things. We can use two slanted lines like this, and that shows that some data is missing. All right? Or we could draw, and that is on this, that is here, we could use it here, or we could use it here. So this is 30, and this is going to be 100. We would just put this line here, and it would tell us that some data is missing. So 30 is here. Let me just write it on. So we have 30 there, and here we have 100. You could represent the data like that. So it tells us that there's some data missing right here, and that is why we jumped up here from 30 to 100. And you can't just do it ad lib anyhow. You can't just say, oh, I'm not working out a scale. I'm just going to put this double line there and put this double line there and put. No. Only if it is needed, you are going to do that. Now, other than this symbol, you could also use this symbol. I think I said it in one of my paper, one of my multiple choice I worked out, but I didn't have anything to show. You could also use this symbol at the bottom to show that there is missing data. And of course, you'd put it on the axis, just as I showed you with this one. This would come pretty much in just the same. So you can use either of these to represent the fact that there is some missing data. And this, of course, you are going to be seeing, I'm seeing now graphs on question number 2 and question number 3 of your HSB paper. You want to ensure that you understand graph and the type of graph that should be there and how to read the graph and that type of a thing. All right. And usually when students see a graph question, they just don't answer it, they just move on. But graphs are usually easy because you're getting the information from the table. All right. Usually when you're plotting the graph, that's another thing, another sheet of paper. If you are putting on more than one variable or more than one data set, you might start off by using little dots to show where the intersection is. If you are using little dots, then you need to draw a little circle around the dot. You draw a little circle that it can't be mistaken. So you might use circle to represent one. We're probably looking at energy here, and we are looking at coal versus solar. So the solar thing here, just let me draw this very quickly. We could look at probably this one going up, getting taken off, and this one we use asterisk, and you would see. And now you put on your key and your scale. So you're seeing two different data sets. So you see how we represent using the dot, and we're using an asterisk or an X here on this, saying something different. All right. So make sure that you have that and then you're able to draw it. Do not run away from questions with graph. They are usually pretty easy. And I'll be sending out a lot of paper too that you can look at and practice. Oh, you might have to find them on my website. But not to worry. If you're finding them on my website, it's for a little bit of cost. It's not a lot of money to find them on my channel. So don't worry yourself. Yes, I've been here free with you for quite some time. So if you have to find some of the information at a little cost, don't worry yourself. It's nothing to kill you. Trust me, it's nothing to kill you. All right. So that said, let me look at what's here, and then we're going to get into malaria. Increased demand on healthcare, yes. Job loss, reduced economic activity. And if there's reduced economic activity, the place have to close down like COVID and all of that, then it's definitely going to lead to closure and job loss, and that could even go into domestic violence and all of these stuff. So the social impact is far-reaching. All right, debt from paying medical bills and job loss. Debt, even debt at the bank, you can't pay your bank loan because you have to use this money to go to the doctor. So the social and the economical impact, it is far-reaching. But we spoke about the impact. Impact. I was really, really deliberate when I used that word. So now that I use that word and I realize that persons are slanting to one side, now I want you to give me the meaning of impact. What does impact mean? Type it in the chat there for me. And as soon as I would have gotten impact and what it means, we're going to jump right into malaria. And what I think we want to remember about malaria, right now, Trinidad and Tobago is going under another partial lockdown as of midnight. Oh my. Whew. Whew. I don't want to speak much on this disease because and the lockdown. I don't have a lot of the information. I don't have a lot of the information. I don't really understand how the disease is really transmitted. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm hoping that the vaccine will work. All right, I'm hoping. All right, so what's the meaning of impact? You see, there are some words used on the HSB paper, and as time go along, I started doing that when I started doing my publication of my videos earlier. So things like state, identify, explain, what is expected of you when these words are used in the exam. Discuss, compare, contrast, distinguish these words. When you see them on the paper, what it is that you should do. No, you can Google to find what impact means. What does it mean when we say what impact it has? Impact is necessarily good, or is it bad, or is it bad only, or is it good only? What is impact? All right, check that out for me. And as you check that out, just let me remind you that dengue is caused by a virus, while malaria is caused by a protozoan. All right? Virus, protozoan. Two different things. Remember, we spoke about the causative agent for pathogenic disease. I would say that there were about 5 of them, something like that. Remember that we did bacteria, virus, worms, that type of thing? Good. All right. So as you look for impact, just let me up on into malaria. Now, malaria is not as prevalent in the Caribbean as would have been dengue. Malaria, always remember that it is caused by a protozoa called Plasmodium. Having a strong all right, but I want to know if it's good or bad. Macmillan, I want to know if impact is good or bad. All right. The vector that is responsible for malaria is the Anopheles, as you rightly said earlier in the show. Now, what really happens with the Plasmodium and human is that it damages the red blood cell. Plasmodium, it damages the red blood cell. And as it go through with this damage, wreaking havoc on your system, it is also releasing toxins in the body. And as it releases the toxin, then the body develops a fever. So just like we did, or just like we had it in It Can Be Bad or Good. Thank you very much, Matt Miller. Just like in dengue, or with dengue, we had fever. With malaria, we also have some amount of fever. Now, if malaria damages, very good, very good. I soon come back to that. If malaria is damaging, if malaria is the cause of damage to the red blood cell, then you know now that we are going again to this word that we have been using a lot lately, anemia. The red blood cells being damaged, then the person who is ill will now be suffering from anemia. Now, if a person is suffering from anemia, it is as a result of the protozoa living in the red blood cell. Now, this will cause a continuous fever at the first part of the infection. But after that, this fever will come on like every 48 hours. Intervals are 48 hours or about 72 hours thereabout. You won't have a fever going on and on. So you might think that, oh, everything is fine now. And then within another 48 or another 72 hours, the fever is back again. Yeah, you are going to have headache, and definitely you are going to have pain. You are going to be suffering from pain because you're having something foreign in the body. There is something that is a little strange about this disease, is that it will cause you to move from shivering cold to hot and sweating. So you're shivering cold now, and then you are fevery hot, right? This is a real sad reality about malaria. Now, malaria could even become really, really chronic, where it affects the brain. So we spoke about dengue fever and the liver being swollen. You could have what we refer to as cerebral malaria. Yes. So where we have cerebral malaria, then you understand that the plasmodium would have affected the cerebral hemisphere. What it means is that the plasmodium would have entered the brain. So mosquito is something for us to fear. A lot of us are afraid of lions, snake. But when you are finished, Google to find out which animal causes the most death in the world, and look where on that index you are going to find mosquito, not lion. Mosquitoes kill more people than lions. Trust me on that. All right, so how do we treat this dreaded disease? Fortunately, malaria is not like dengue. Malaria is not like dengue. And we have some treatment. Yes, it can be cured with medication. We have treatment like quinine, we have plasmoquine, we have chloroquine, and these are just three of the many medications that is used to treat or to get rid of the plasmodium. Now, the prevention method is always the best method, however, and of course, prevention is always better than the cure. What does it look like when we compare these two mosquito diseases? The first thing, dengue is caused by a virus. What is malaria caused by? Tell me in the chat. Let me see how much you're remembering. Dengue is caused by a virus. What causes malaria? All right, a whole lot of drugs we can use for malaria. All right, Audrey, I am seeing that. All right, so as persons respond to the question I asked, now you have to multitask with Mr. Wilson because we have a short time to do a lot. All right, so when you get a question about impact, don't go just writing one side of the question. Everything is bad, 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 bad. The doctors will earn from you when you have dengue and malaria. You're not going to see the doctors free. So while we're losing money and becoming poor, somebody is becoming rich. So when you say impact, don't just talk about the bad things. Try to find out if there's anything good to talk about, because if you're seeing impact, right, it's not affecting you. And also I want you to be careful with these two words, affect and effect. Affect and effect. Make sure you know the difference between these two words before you get into the exam. So malaria is caused by a protozoa. I am seeing Williams and Amoy saying that. Another thing I said is that malaria could cause some brain problem. We refer to it as cerebral malaria. What is that vital organ that we spoke about when we spoke about dengue? So we spoke about the brain for malaria. What did we talk about? What we spoke about when we made mention of an organ and dengue? Which organ it was? Can anybody tell me? So we talk about the brain with cerebral malaria. So for dengue, which organ it was? Very good. It was the liver. All right. So do we have any vaccine, any medication treatment for dengue fever, for dengue, the virus? Do we have anything to treat it? Is there anything to treat dengue? Now, I gave you a long list of things that we could use to control the protozoa, from plasmaquine, chloroquine, quinine. Very good, Audrey. I gave you a long list of stuff that we could use to treat malaria. Is there anything that we could use to treat? There is no vaccine for dengue. There is, however, medication for the pain, for the fever, sorry, but there is no vaccine for the dengue fever. And one of the things you need to recall is that if you're having any disease that could cause bleeding, you want to stay away from aspirin. So if you're having anything like this and it's too much for you to bear, see the doctor. Don't try to remedy yourself. All right? So we know that there is no vaccine for dengue, but we do have medication for malaria. All right? Very good. So I'm going to be looking at just two more things, and then we would have completed the evening, or we should be here. There is another disease that we refer to as filariasis. 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 Now, filariasis is pretty much a disease that is caused, or the vector that transmits this disease is the Culex mosquito. We said that the early part of the show. And the agent or the pathogen that is being transmitted is a worm. Hold it. We are now talking about, this is a third mosquito we are making mention of. The first, we said that the causative agent for the disease was virus. The second one, we said that it was a protozoa. Now the third We are saying now that it is a worm. We are now saying that it is a worm. And what this worm does is that it blocks the lymphatic vessels. And when it blocks the lymphatic vessel, what tends to happen is that you tend to have swelling, or the area that is blocked becomes swollen. Now, if this continue without being remedied, then you can have an extreme swelling or an extreme case that we refer to as elephantitis. And elephantitis is an extreme case where the area becomes swollen. In most cases, you'd have seen a person's leg being swollen from the hip going straight down. And of course, this could also affect places like the testes, right? So anywhere that become blocked by these worms could cause you to have this swelling and be exposed to the disease called elephantitis. All right? So you'd have to see a doctor to have this remedied. You cannot treat with it yourself. We also made mention of yellow fever, which is caused by the Aedes. And again, the Aedes is carrying a virus. And yellow fever, it takes out the liver. Yellow fever takes out the liver. Some of the things that you are going to see if you're suffering from disease, you're going to be vomiting, and it's as if you eat charcoal. It is black. All right? You're going to have fever that pretty much has no cure. Right? It just has to do its time. Now, it may cause death, though if you recover, you will have some amount of immunity. Now, vaccine is available. Vaccine is available. While there's no treatment for this type of a fever, vaccine is available to provide immunity for up to 10 years. So there's vaccine that is available that can cause immunity for up to 10 years. Now, remember, for all these mosquito-caused disease, the best way to treat with them is to prevent them. And in preventing them is to prevent yourself and your loved ones and those that you hate from being bitten by mosquitoes. So if you tablet distribution. Tanisha, say more. I'm not too sure where you're going with that. All right. So if you know of any mosquito breeding site, if you can't take care of it, ask your public health agent to take care of it. If you know of anybody who is not disposing of a garbage well, probably you want to reach out to them or have somebody who they respect to reach out to them to ensure that you won't suffer or have to experience anything like dengue, malaria, filaris, yellow fever, or the many other that would have been there as a result of our action or lack thereof. This brings me to the end of today's show. Like I promised, tomorrow you are going to be seeing a couple of videos being rolled out. There are some videos on the channel. Please make use of the videos. I spoke about some things that I think that will be on the exam paper. I'll try to see if I can find some more things that will be there, and I'll inform you as soon as these become available. All right. So thanks much for joining. When you watch my videos, you know what you're supposed to do. And to add to that, you are going to go to the description, check the description below the video, and you will find sometime important notice or important links. You are going to be finding a link very shortly to my website. And on my website, it will tell you everything when you go over to the website. I really don't want to do any marketing for my website. You are going to be finding pretty soon access to my website in the description. Now, to pay to access the website, it's going to be easy. The payment method, PayPal, Western Union, cash, bank transfer, uh, credit card, debit card, whichever way. You are going to have many, many ways to pay. And of course, I know that there are things on the channel as cheap. It is all in US. It's the international or the standard figure now. So I think things that are there for as low as, I don't remember if it's 10 or $20, but 10 or $20 is going to give you a year or something like that access. So you see that it's a little bit of money. If you are in Jamaica and you were supposed to go to school with 10 or 20 US dollar, I don't know that that is possible because that is probably 10 or $20. I think it's about 3,000 or there about dollar for the entire year. All right. So, and you would have your password and you can make use of it. You can probably share it with somebody for the rest of the period. So I am looking forward for your support on the channel. I will continue to have free classes here, but there's also paid classes on the channel. That persons who need one-on-one, you can talk to me. Persons who are having problem with labs, you can talk to me and all of that. All things are being worked out and you weren't seeing me because I was working on getting the channel up and ensuring that the past papers are available. We're going to be offering more than just bio and HSB on the channel. In some cases, it will be group learning where you're going to be joining a class like you join a class now, if you so decide, or there will be self-paced course where you're going to get the audio, the video, whatever there is, the worksheet, everything will be explained like the past papers are explained, like the notes on the YouTube channel is explained. If you like what is happening on the YouTube, it will be a little better over there on the paid version where you are going to be getting the full course, the full animation, direct link to me and all of that. Although most persons say, but I have a direct link to you already, sir, because as I send a comment, you respond. Yes, usually if you send a comment, I'm always seated around the computer, so I see these comments as they come in. Anyhow, thank you much for stopping by, and I do look forward for the support by my website. All right. As little as it is, I'd greatly appreciate it. All right. Good evening and continue to enjoy your evening. Remember to study. Do the past papers. It's past paper time. I'm going to see if I can send out something after this show, but I know tomorrow you'll be getting a lot of stuff. All right. Ta-ta.